Hey, everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia, back with the latest episode of the JungleRoar podcast, powered by the great folks at FanDuel Sportsbook, your exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Back with me today on this week's episode of the JungleRoar Pod is the one and only Geoff Butch Hobson of Bengals.com, has done a great job for decades. How about that, Butch? Covering the Bengals. How you doing, Butch?
Sounding good. Trags, Happy New Year. Good to be with you. It's good to see you get those FanDuel commercials. Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis would not be,
Yes,
but it's a new era, though.
it is a new era, not a new era, or not a new error, but a new
Correct.
era, as we
It's
like
good
to
to see
say.
you, Trags. It's good to be with you. I'm ready to have a Happy New Year. Let's have a good New Year. You had a good year in 23. I'm going to have a good year in 24.
There you go. Here's a good jumping off point, and I think it's a topic on everybody's mind, and that is the next general manager of either the Patriots or the Las Vegas Raiders could have definitive Cincinnati roots. Trey Brown. What can you tell us about Trey Brown? He's a scouting executive, or he's a personnel executive with the Cincinnati Bengals right now. He has certainly scouting backgrounds with both the Patriots and the Raiders. That's why his name has come up as a potential candidate in both locales. What can you tell us about Trey Brown?
Trey Brown is about as an attractive, appealing, and bona fide candidate as there is in the league when it comes to personnel. This guy's worked for 3 different leagues. He played at UCLA. He's been a big boost to the Bengals staff. He's been here about 3 years, and the guy does it all. He kind of is he's a scout, but he's also more than that. He's got experience in administrative duties, and as you know, Trags, the way Duke Tobin and the Bengals have built the scouting department over there is they do a little bit of everything. It's small, but it's compact. They know what each other's doing. They can all do the same jobs, and I think Trey does a great job bouncing between Mike Potts, the director of college scouting, and Steve Radicevic, the director of pro scouting, and helps them out both scouting and with the administrative stuff. He's been a very, as all those guys are, because it is such a small staff. He's a valuable guy.
Well, and I think what the interesting point to me is how he's bounced back and forth between director of college scouting and director of pro scouting. Like you mentioned, you have to have your hand in both if you're building a roster in today's NFL, obviously. And I would think a potential organization like the Patriots, let's say, where he worked between 2010 and 2012 with Bill Belichick and certainly Nick Caserio, who's done a great job building the Houston Texans. He has some experience in both fields, and I think that would be very valuable and very enticing to an organization like the Patriots, who, let's face it, Butch, and we know New England pretty well, they need to write a different chapter following Bill Belichick.
Yeah, I think it sounds like they're going to, except for the hiring of the head coach.
Yep.
It sounds like it sounds like they're going to go in and kind of tip it upside down a little bit, at least personnel wise. Because I think at least, and I don't know, Trags, you're closer to it than I am, but the perception is the big Achilles heel to Belichick's reign was the scouting. The last decade, they just didn't scout well. They just didn't draft well, And so it sounds like that's what they're going to attack. And they're going to rely on Mayo to, kind of keep the philosophy, try and keep the DNA. But I think, you'll see a lot of new faces on that personnel side. And in Trey, you get a guy like, he's such a versatile guy because he's done it all. Right. And he's done it all on different pro levels, so he's scouted college for you. He's dipped into free agents for you. He's got a great background. It's a very, I'm sure people are looking at him, very, very seriously because he offers that, you can't argue with his resume. I mean, he's one of these guys that will not let you turn away from the resume.
What I think is interesting about the Patriots is with Gerard Mayo. He has this reputation as a leader of men, building a culture there that is going to be, I think, in some ways, maybe even more discipline based than Bill Belichick's, or at least certainly in a different way. And I think with regards to personnel, the head coach won't have as much of a heavy hand in the personnel decisions. And that's the way the Kraft family wants it. The Kraft family wants someone else having the firm hand on the direction of the ship, if you will, stern on the wheel, and make sure that the ship is headed in the right direction. And I think with Bill, the Crafts felt like, if Bill steered it down a certain path, there was no getting it out of the way of, changing course. And I think in this particular case, if you were to bring in a guy like Trey Brown, who knows the organization already, certainly knows the family, you could change that in one fell swoop.
It's interesting you talk about discipline. To me, that is kind of that's a balance beam coaches are walking, because I think Zach has shown he's done a great job reaching out to this new generation of players and being able to get the most out of this generation of players. It's a lot different than what Bill dealt with. It was a different. These guys are different than they were at the turn of the century. They're different than the 1980s Giants. I mean, it's just
Certainly.
it's just a different kind of guy. So when you say discipline, I get it, but like you say, it's a different kind of discipline. I think it's going to be, and in Mayo, they get a guy who was just seemed like he was just playing. You know what I mean? So that I could see that. I could see how that hire could work. I know there are people in the Boston media kind of with the big question marks, but it's different now. It's different. It's not even 2015 now. You need a different type of head coach because it's a different type of locker room. So I would not poo-poo that Mayo hire. I think it's very interesting.
And we'll wait and see. He's going to go through his growing pains as any first-time NFL head coach is going to go through it. He's never coached, been a head coach anywhere, and this is his first gig. But he knows the organization. He knows the Kraft family. But it'll be interesting if they were to go in the direction of Trey Brown from the Bengals. Maybe an outside approach that Trey Brown, or another approach for that matter, that a young and upcoming NFL executive could bring to the table, Butch.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see why the Crafts were taking a long look at Trey. He's got all the. He's got all the. Like they say he's got all the tools.
All right, let's move on to, by the way, we're speaking with Geoff Hobson of Bengals.com. You can catch his stuff at everything on Bengals.com. Please do so. I want to move on to Willie Anderson and the potential he has for reaching the pinnacle of the NFL in terms of individual accolades. That's the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. You are going to be part of a Zoom meeting coming up this week. Bring us inside the Zoom meeting. It was going to be in Atlanta, but that got scratched because of travel changes and difficulties. But you're going to be on a Zoom call. And this is where you make your case for Willie Anderson, former Bengals right tackle, for the Hall of Fame. He is a finalist, correct?
Yes. Yep. He's one of 15 modern era finalists, which means he's been retired within 20 years and 25 years, and he's this is a great shot. This is a great opportunity for him because it's a field where there is really not one drop dead guy. And when I say a drop dead guy, I mean Willie is clearly a Hall of Famer, certainly in our minds and in how we view it. But I think much of the and this is true, and this is the way I see it too. There's just not a favorite, and usually when you come into these things, there's two or three. Well, these guys are going in,
right?
And you just don't have it now. The first year eligibles are very good and have a good shot at going in, and those are Julius Peppers and Antonio Gates. And after that, they usually put in 5 modern era guys. So I think I think he's even got a great shot when you mention those two guys, because Willie Anderson played Julius Peppers and blanked him. Julius Peppers is he's one of the top 8 rushers of all time, and Willie blanked 7 of those guys in head-to-head competition. And
is that your
Peppers
leaping off point, Butch?
it
If you're going to
certainly
make your
is.
case,
It most certainly is. I basically, Trags, what I'm saying is there's a very good chance there's a chance we may put in Julius Peppers and or Jared Allen today, and Willie blanked both those guys. So Willie should go wherever those guys go, and then I go from there. So that's you get 5 minutes, and that's not very long. But I've also got a handout that I've updated throughout the process this fall, and it will be they'll have that in their hands. Hopefully they read it. If it was face to face, I know they'd read it because I was gonna hand it out. Mina Creamer at the Bengals, our graphic artist at Bengals.com, who is just terrific, does great work. She had me all ready to go with a great handout, and I can show it to you.
yeah, if you don't mind.
Oh, there it is. There it is. It is Willie Anderson. I don't know if you can see it, but
Yep, hold it up. There you go. And it's a little whited out. There you go.
Then you go, and it's a front and back, and it's got all sorts
What's
of
the
stuff.
quote from Ozzie Newsome? Bring up the quote.
The quote from Ozzie Newsome. The right tackle became just as important as the left tackle because of the guy that they were facing on any given Sunday. The game has changed. When you're at right tackle, you have to play Michael Strahan, who was in the Hall of Fame. I could probably name several others. I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He is the prototypical right tackle.
There you go. And that is from someone who was very familiar in divisional battles with Willie Anderson.
Well, that's the other point I make, Trags, is Bill Cowher is also very also backs Willie for the Hall, as does Michael Strahan, who we talked about, and Warren Sapp. And so here we have these folks are telling us, the people who are endorsing Willie for the Hall of Fame, we have already voted into the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
So we've already got our own stamp of approval.
Kind of like Mel Blount gave his stamp of approval for the late, great Ken Riley, who you did a phenomenal job with getting him into the Hall of Fame, by the way, Butch. Congratulations.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Bengal Jim had a lot to do with that, too. He was very...
Thank you, Bengal Jim.
He was very helpful. But, a lot of guys rallied to Kenny's, and that's what you need. And hopefully, the same thing for Ken Anderson. I think there's talked to Dan Fouts the other day when I was doing the story on Coy Bacon, and Fouts has always been in Ken Anderson's corner. He loves to tell the story that when Bill Walsh came to the Chargers as the offensive coordinator, right after Paul Brown retired, and Tiger Johnson became the head coach. Bill Walsh moved on to the Chargers, and he had tape of Virgil Carter, Greg Cook, and Kenny Anderson, and that's all he watched. He basically was watching film of what Walsh and Paul Brown had done with the quarterbacks in Cincinnati. So Fouts will always, he endorses Kenny for the Hall. He's just one of a few Hall of Fame. Charlie Joyner is a Kenny Anderson guy who's a Hall of Fame receiver. Kenny had early in his career here in Cincy. So hopefully we go down the same path.
If Ken Anderson wins Super Bowl 16 and is the MVP, is he in by now? Like Ken Stabler?
Yeah, I mean, I don't care what I say, but that's what Chris Collinsworth says. Chris Collinsworth said
I've always felt that, by the way. If Charles Alexander runs the screen route out in the flat 2 yards deeper, is Ken Anderson in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I think Kenny and Ken Riley are both in when they should have gone in. unfortunately, and maybe they take Isaac Curtis with them. But this is the struggle against when you try to put a guy in. That's one of the, I think, the great Rick Goose Goslin, a longtime Hall of Fame voter, best known at the Dallas Morning News, but a guy who covered the league for nearly 40 years, and he's got those stats where 68% of the guys, or more than half, either were all-decade players or played on Super Bowl champions. And this is one gripe, and you can talk to Paul Taylor Jr. about this. He says this is going to be on my tombstone, but I do believe it. There are too many good players on great teams who are in the Hall, and there's not enough great players on good or bad teams that are in the Hall.
That's a great point by Paul Dehner Jr. I love that point, Butch.
So that's mine. That is what I said. Paul always applies it to me and says it's going to be on my tombstone.
Oh, okay.
I've been saying that. I mean, I've been saying that probably since Paul was in grade school. So.
Okay, there you go. Well, thanks for clarifying that, Butch. I thought it was Paul saying that, but so Paul is actually attributing that to you.
Yes, right, right. And he does a great job. And he does a great job with stuff. He's made a great case for Corey Dillon. He's really delved into Corey Dillon's case, and he does have a good one. And I've used it with various voters. It's hopefully we get Willie in, and then hopefully we can get Corey in and talk about Chad. And there's Isaac Curtis on the senior circuit, and Tim Crumrye on the senior circuit, as well as Ken Anderson. Believe me, there's no shortage of candidates.
When are the results out?
They'll come out the Thursday before the Super Bowl.
So you'll hold the vote this week? You'll hold the arguments, the presentations this week?
Right. The vote is this week. The results will be announced the Thursday before the Super Bowl.
And they make a big production of it at the Super Bowl, which is why the lead up time has kind of changed. Because when I was covering the Super Bowls back in the 2000s and 2010s, they would usually have a meeting at the Super Bowl and then just announce it right there, right then and right there.
Yeah, it was the day before the Super Bowl.
The Saturday, that's right. Yeah.
It was the Saturday before the Super Bowl, and it used to be that we vote and they put out a release. And now
it has to be produced. Everything's for TV, Butch.
It's always it always seems to be a fact of life, Trags.
All right, let's move on. This is a Bengals podcast, and we want to talk about the upcoming 2024 Bengals. We're in the offseason now. When I take a look at some of the playoff games, and we've, as we record this, have seen 4 of them so far, 2 games stick out to me. And that would be the Kansas City game over Miami, the win over Miami, and the Green Bay game over Dallas. And to me, the run game, and I'm setting you up to hit a 300-yard drive down the middle of the fairway. Right. Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. Run the ball in the playoffs, stop the run, you've got a good chance of winning. And I think that is something the Bengals are going to take a good, long, hard look at in the offseason. How do they improve their run game, and how do they complement it with what Joe Burrow obviously brings to the table?
Yeah, I think it's the Browning thing. I think Zach does a good job of turning adversity into a positive. And so I think maybe those 7 stats that Jake Browning had, Zach's going to sit down and God willing, if Brian Callahan is still with them, and Dan Pitcher and Troy Walters, they'll sit and they'll look at that and how Browning played it and how it was with Browning. And it wasn't all that different, I guess, than with Joe, but it was different enough that I'm sure, these are smart guys. They're going to look at what can be tweaked, what can be fixed. And that the 7 games with Browning may have been maybe something that they can turn into a positive and help improve the offense with Joe.
I just think the run game can help Joe Burrow out tremendously if the Bengals are willing to use it. And I don't know if you've gotten a sense of this over time with Joe Burrow, but he's got to want to see a good running game as well. I know he wants to throw the ball a lot. Yeah. I know he wants the ball in his hands. I mean, you're paying him as such to have the ball in his hands, to be obviously a game changer, and he is that. We're not saying that he's not, but I just think if you put an effective, explosive run game. We've heard this time and time and time again from the Bengals. They want an explosive run game. They don't necessarily want to run the ball 20 times or 25 times a game.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that's Chase Brown. I think in the last 6 games, he got all but 5 of his touches, of his rookie touches, and they were, he was pretty impressive. He's very impressive. I mean, obviously that terrific speed he's got, and he's a different he gives you a different look than Mixon. So, I think they have to make a decision there. What kind of run game do they want? I'm not sure. Right now it seems to be a little bit of everything. I don't know if they want to streamline it and make it more focused, but I think, I think it's, and we've talked to Zach enough to know that he's that his bread and butter is his bread and butter. It's 11 personnel,
Yep.
and it's throwing the ball. And I think what he's doing, he's striving for balance. And I think he'll, I think everybody says, well, what's the formula in the division? Well, I just don't think it's, people say, well, you just can't say they didn't have Burrow. You can't just say that because everybody gets hurt. Well, I think you do just have to say that because that's reality.
I would agree. I would agree with that, Butch.
The Bengals are Joe Burrow. Burrow is the Bengals. Okay, so
and he is signed to that contract to be exactly that. They they are building their roster and building their attitude around one singular player.
The formula is Burrow to win the formula to win the AFC North is Burrow is healthy, because the 2 years he's been healthy, they've won it.
Correct.
Period, end of paragraph. Right. So
I'm going to jump in here, Butch, because I think if Burrow has a healthy Chase Brown from the beginning of the year, and let's say Joe Mixon's not on the roster for whatever reason next year, and Chase Brown takes that next step in the Zach Taylor, whoever the offensive coordinator is, if it's still Brian Callahan, if he is the feature back in that offense, I think the offense takes a big step forward.
Well, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, they'll there better be another guy like that too, because I think Chase is.
They need another running back. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's because you need more than one. So I don't know. I think it's hard to. I thought Mixon was their most valuable player. I mean, next to Jamar Chase, I thought he was
on offense. You're talking about.
Yeah, on offense. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and maybe even as a team, because Trey Hendrickson was great, but it was the offense had a better year than the defense, and Trey Hendrickson was terrific. Trey Hendrickson was fabulous.
I just thought he was the most outstanding player, but yeah, I could see that point.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, okay, Chase, Hendrickson, Mixon. I think you could talk about all 3 of them, and all 3 of them would have a case. So that's why I'm not sure that Mixon is. I still think Mixon is somehow in the mix. But I don't want to slight Trey, because it was obviously the greatest year a Bengals pass rusher ever had, and he had the other one.
Right.
I mean, he's been a great Bengal. He's an all-time Bengals great, Trags. He's only played 3 years. You have to call him a franchise great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, when he is on the field and healthy, Trey Hendrickson impacts what teams can do, especially when it's throwing the ball. Okay. Yeah. I want to, because everybody has a thought on this, get your thoughts on Tee Higgins. Which way do you think the Bengals are leaning?
I mean, Burrow said he's coming back, right? That's all I have. That's all I need to know.
Do you think Joe Burrow knows, honest to God, do you think Joe Burrow knows something we don't, or is he just saying that?
No, I don't know. I think he's mouthing what he's been hearing around the building, which is we're going to keep it. We're going to do what we can to keep the guy. I think they've been very committed to that since T was eligible to sign an extension. I mean, I think it's something they want to do. I don't think they count themselves out. I know people are saying there's no way they can have all 3. I think they're trying to find a way to do it.
So the tag would be about 21.4 million if we're, this is the estimate, based off some of the salary cap projection tables we see out there online, and they're easily accessible. But about 21.4. You tag him for 1 year, as they like to say in sports these days. The hot term with kids, cool kids these days, is run it back. And I think there is the chance that the Bengals run it back for 1 more year with Tee and Ja'Marr and then go from there. I think ideally they would like to have a long-term deal with Tee. They'd like to have a long-term deal with Ja'Marr. I don't know if that's feasible given, the track record that the Bengals have with Tee Higgins' agent, and that's David Mulugheta.
I think there's a lot of things on the table. And it's just, we're in a different era, Trags, where, some of this stuff, was easy to do. It's just not as easy to do now because they've got the quarterback with the generational contract. And so, things are going to take time. It's just, back in the day, it was easy to do this stuff. You could mail it in, but can't mail it in anymore. It's such a, it's like putting together a rocket launch.
Well, it's a curse and a blessing, Butch. That's what this is. When you have the elite talent that the Bengals do on offense, and you're talking about the quarterback and 2 receivers, you're going to have to pay them as such, and then you're going to have to find a way to fit them under the salary cap structure so it doesn't hamstring you in other areas. And that's what I think the Blackburns are, that's why I think Katie is one of the very best in the NFL, because she eventually will find a way. But I think Bengal fans want to make sure that that Joe Burrow doesn't get shortchanged in terms of the weapons that he has next year.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. They've, it's like you said, Katie usually finds a way. So there's, and even beyond T, there's other, what do you do with your slot receiver? Is Charlie Jones ready, or, do you have to draft another guy, or can you somehow get Tyler Boyd back? I mean, that's an intriguing question too.
It is, but I think you would agree that Tee Higgins is probably priority number 1, because you have to solve the Tee Higgins puzzle before you move on to, I think, signing Ja'Marr long term. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but you have to decide, here's what we're going to do with Tee. Here's the offer we're prepared to make. And they've, reportedly already made 1 offer to him, and it was not, accepted. But they're going to have to make 1 final offer and come up with a decision as to how to move forward, and then take on Ja'Marr Chase. Correct?
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying I wasn't putting them in any kind of a priority.
Right.
I'm just saying there's questions beyond T too. I mean, and because that was a big topic, obviously, for the last 2 weeks of the year, was these great 3 receivers. Can you keep them together? And so it's just not going to be, 1 guy you're trying to keep in there. You really, you're going to be, you're trying to keep, which is maybe another reason why you've got to keep, really go overboard, not overboard, but we really got to get T, because you at least want 2 of those. I would think you at least want 2 of
Correct.
those 3.
I'm on board with that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Keep at least the top 2, reassess the running game, rebuild the running game, however you want to look at it. But the running game, the 2 wide receivers, and a tight end.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think Burrow solves a lot of that himself, just coming back. But yeah, you've hit it on the head. Trags, that's it right there. I mean, I think, they may have their tight end with Tanner Hudson. I know he's
you know what? I could buy that if he continues to progress like he did this year.
Yeah.
I liked what Tanner Hudson gave them. He was reliable when he got open. He caught the ball. He made good positive yardage. Yeah. I think, and Burrow loves his tight ends that act as a release valve when the pressure is on. He likes to look for his tight end. I thought Tanner Hudson did a very, very nice job. And if you told me, maybe they can't do as much with the tight end, and they'd have to stick with Tanner Hudson, I'd be very happy with that. One more thing, and then I got to let you go. Jonah Williams is another huge piece of the offensive puzzle. Maybe he hits free agency. He's certainly eligible to go to free agency, but they're going to have to look at right tackle as well.
Yeah, that's right, Trags. That's a good call. I mean, and if you look at the Pro Football Focus and what his projected contract is, he played himself into some big money. And, you know, I thought Jonah was always an underrated guy. He played hurt. He showed up at the gate. I thought he was a smart guy. You know, I just thought he was underrated. Those guys don't grow on trees. And, you know, this is one of these guys, you know, you find out when he's gone. But to me, this would almost seem like, you know, hard for them to pay, you know, I think they would have to pay him at least what they're paying Orlando Brown. And that's just not, I mean, you just can't.
Not feasible.
That's, you know, it just doesn't. So I don't know. I mean, they'd love to keep him, but I guess that's why they have first-round draft picks too. So I would think that would probably be an easy call on what they're going to take in the first round, probably.
I would think so, either there or defensive tackle. If there's a stud defensive tackle, somebody to, you know, take the spot of DJ Reader, you know, and we'll see if DJ comes back on a one-year deal. Unfortunate injury, obviously, at the end of the year. But I think nose tackle and right tackle are two positions they're going to have to address in the offseason.
And then keep loading up at edge and cornerback.
Yes. All right, Butch. Anything else you're working on?
No, I think that's it. Trags, we're headed to getting ready for the Senior Bowl, right? We're getting ready for we're delving into the big board.
I will be following your coverage down there. I assume you'll be down there.
We'll be there. We'll be there, and we'll be. I'm sorry you won't be there, but you'll be.
No, I will not.
But at some point you're going to be hitting the Reds, right?
I will be. I'll be doing that. College basketball. Hitting a lot of activities coming up in the springtime. I get a little time out in Arizona, so that's not a bad thing either. A lot of sunshine to warm me up after these cold January days.
Trags, you're more versatile than Joe Mixon.
Okay. I will take that as a compliment. I appreciate it, Butch. And
just as reliable.
I was going to say you are more reliable than anybody that I know on the beat. So there you go.
Trags, I appreciate you checking in with me, and don't be a stranger here as you delve into the Cincinnati Reds. You'll be actually covering a real baseball team, and I'll be following a double A organization called the Charles River Red Sox.
I had to let you get that bitterness in, and you know we'll see how the baseball season unwinds, but it doesn't look great for the Carmine Hose. Remember the Carmine?
No, yes. No, it does not look good, Trags. It does not. It looks so bad that they called off the hot stove meeting in Springfield.
Yes, they did, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
All right. He is Butch Hobson. I got to cut you off there, Butch.
Sounds great, Trags. Thank you for having me on very much. Thank you for having me on.
Posted on the Hall of Fame vote for Willie Anderson. That'll be big news. The vote will be, or the meeting will be this week. The vote is coming up, and we'll get the results again when? Thursday before the Super Bowl?
That's correct. Thursday night at the awards show.
All right. He is Geoff Hobson. Follow his great work on Bengals.com. My name is Mike Petraglia. Thanks for downloading and watching this episode of the JungleRoar podcast, powered by FanDuel Sportsbook, the exclusive wagering partner of CLNS Media Network. Until next week, I'm Mike Petraglia. Keep that jungle roaring.